Okay, we're gonna say hi to everyone. We are testing a little bit our technology issues. So, for those who speak English, we're gonna say hi to everyone. And those who speak French, we're gonna say bonjour, bonsoir. Ça dépend de l'ère à laquelle vous allez nous suivre. Today, we're gonna speak about what we said. This is a public continuing education. Donc, c'est une continuité de l'éducation publique. Les gens peuvent se demander à quoi sert cette éducation publique. Mais oui, parce que l'éducation publique, ça concerne tout le monde. Et aujourd'hui, le monde est en train de vivre les défis qui n'a jamais vécu sur tous les plans. Il y a crise politique, il y a crise religieuse, il y a crise économique, il y a crise environnementale. Donc, si nous n'apprenons pas de nos erreurs ou des erreurs de nos aïeux, si nous n'apprenons pas de l'histoire du passé, nous serons alors appelés à commettre les mêmes erreurs. So I was saying that if it happens to you to ask yourself, like, why should we follow this public story containing educations, especially about Africa? So I was saying that people who do not learn from their mistake, people who do not learn from their story, they are called to make the same mistake. And today we are living a global crisis in different domain, like any political, climate change, economy, and a lot of things. So that's why the continuing education is very important, and the public continuing education is more important than we could imagine. Also, about Africa, to learn things about Africa is very important because Africa is the birthplace of humanity. So, according to many research, as Africa will not have peace, the world will never have peace, because it's like a son who cares about his parents, and when his parents do not have peace, he will not feel peace wherever he will be. That's why it's so important to learn about Africa's story as the birthplace of humanity, and so that as we promote peace for Africa, we will be promoting peace for the world, because Africa is the birthplace of humanity. That's why it's very important. So, as we said, today we are a little bit late, but today we're gonna learn the story of Nigeria. We said that in Africa we have many countries. Today we can count 54 countries, but before 1960, Africa had 42 countries, and those 43 two countries were under colonization from European powers country at that time, because today many of European there are no more power countries around the world. So at that time, the European countries were the power countries, and they had to to do the colonization everywhere, even here in the United States, where I am. We have been part of the colonization from England. So the European countries had power all around the world, and they had this power in Africa. So today we're gonna learn how the Nigeria, which is one of the country of Africa, how they get the pathway to the independence. And we are talking about a man who was like a model of every African country at that time to get the independence. So it was not easy for African people at that time, and usually the civil society at that time, because all the political power and the public administration was under colonization. So only the civil society could organize themselves and they tried to do something. But also they didn't know what to do. And many of them, they didn't know even about the independence. So there were men. A man named Simon Kimbangu. We call him the African common ancestral source. He is the one who were helping them to get the independence. So let me just go back. So as I was saying, that's why many of African countries get independence by the help that the many Kimbangu did it to them. So I'm gonna read in French the history of Nigeria, and I'm gonna explain in English. So we start with those who can listen in French, and we're gonna explain for those who can listen in English. This is the general geography of Nigeria. Bref aperçu géographique du Nigeria. La République fédérale du Nigeria, était État d'Afrique de l'Ouest, situé dans le golfe de Guinée et limité à l'ouest par le Bénin et à l'est-sud par le Cameroun et au nord par le Niger et à l'est-nord par le Tchad. Elle pour superficie 923 768 km² et depuis 1991, donc 1991, sa capitale est Abuja. Le poids économique et démographique du Nigeria lui a valu le surnom de géant de l'Afrique. So here they are talking about the Nigeria geography. And they say that Nigeria is around some countries like Guinea, like Benin, like Cameroon, like Niger, and like Chad. Those are neighbors country to Nigeria. Let's go to the story of the country. In French, l'actuel Nigeria s'est édifié à partir de tout un ensemble d'États et de royaumes passant le plus souvent par des frontières autochtones culturelles. So they are saying that the Nigeria is known as a big state with different states and a kingdom. And the autochthon, like the people from the original land, they live there. They say, en plus, Yoruba, ce sont des royaumes d'Oyo, d'Ifé, d'Ibadan, de Egba, de Ko, de Badagry. So they are citing the name of tribes living in Nigeria, like the Oyo, the Ife, the Baden, Ekben, Deko, et de Badagry. À l'est, il s'agit plutôt de cités fortement organisées, tout comme qu'il n'existe au nord, autour de villes comme Kano et Zaria, avec les 7 États Usun. So this is the story of Nigeria. They are talking about different tribes and how cities are organized. Then from that story, we will now learn the intervention of this man. We also call him the man with the loincloth. He was dressing like a traditional chief. That's why we call him with that name. And he's known as Kimbangu. He's also known as Simon Kimbangu. Simon Kimbangu. That is his name. So now they're going to talk about the intervention of this man in Nigeria. I'm going to read in French and I'm going to explain in English. L'intervention de l'homme en panne. L'homme en panne, c'est celui qu'on appelle Kimbangu. Cet ancêtre commun de peuples africains et de peuples du monde tant que l'Afrique est le berceau de l'humanité. D'une manière générale, l'homme en panne intervenait toujours pour l'intérêt d'un pays qui aspirait à l'indépendance. They are saying that in general, this man, the man with loincloth, the man that we call the African common ancestor source, Kimbangu, they say that he was just doing his intervention in the country where people are thinking and dreaming to get the independence. If the people of that country dreaming to get the independence, that is where Kimbangu will come to do his intervention and to help these people to achieve their dream, which was about the independence. So they keep saying, c'est une évidence pour la majorité des pays africains. Mais pour les Nigérians, l'homme en panne n'a rien fait sur les engins de l'indépendance. They are saying that that was the general case in many countries of Africa. But in the case of Nigeria, this man didn't do a lot, but we're going to learn what he did in Nigeria. Il avait déjà pressenti que son intervention dans le futur de ce pays, qui sera animé par des troubles politiques très graves, aura une autre envergure. So they are talking that the man of loincloth, Kimbangu, he already knew that in Nigeria, the case will be difficult. So they are talking about the date of March 17, 1962. March 17, 1962, à Ibadan, la troisième ville plus importante du Niger. So Ibadan is the third city very important in Nigeria. À côté du grand marché, il y eut un kiosque sous forme d'une terrasse mentionnée cafétéria, dans lequel les clients qui se rendaient pendant les repos de service entre 12h à 14h pour se détendre après un travail harassant. So they are talking that Kimbangu went to look for a terrace, kind of a restaurant, and there were a cafeteria. So he went to sit there at the time that people were going there to the cafeteria to have their lunch. So the specific time was around 12 and 14. So they say that he was there. I'm going to continue to read in French. They say, tout était mis en vente pour un service normal d'un restaurant-bar. So everything was going fine as a normal day for a bar restaurant. Et toutes les places étaient occupées par toutes les catégories socio-professionnelles et de toutes les couches sociaux, riches, pauvres, femmes, hommes, civils, militaires, politicians, etc., etc. So they are saying that on that day of March 17, 1962, at that restaurant, everything was going fine and everyone was there. So we continue. Juste sur une longue bordure séparant la cafétéria et la charcuterie se trouvait un vieux mendiant qui avait une grande plaie au niveau de la jambe droite et qui ne lui permettait pas de porter un pantalon. So they are saying that there were two restaurants. One was a cafeteria, the other one was for people to get like a sandwich. And they are talking about a man, this man, Kimbangu, who was there in the middle of both restaurants. And he had an injury, so he could not dress normally to wear a pant. So he had a short pant. Then they continue to share the story. They say, appuyant son dos contre la bordure, il avait l'avantage de tendre la main pour demander de l'argent aux clients qui entraient dans la cafétéria et qui sortaient de la charcuterie par la grille réservée pour la sortie. So this man, Kimbangu, he had been sitting between two restaurants and he was asking for money. Sa présence gênait les clients des deux côtés, non seulement parce qu'il était très sale, mais aussi parce qu'il avait une grande plaie à travers laquelle l'os du tibia se faisait voir, avec du sang qui coulait en gouttes. Cette plaie était sans soin ni pansement, ouverte et saignante, que les gens avaient du mal à regarder. So they are talking about this man Kimbangu who had been sitting between two restaurants. And people could not see him twice because he had an injury, and that was so sad. So we keep reading the story. Il était donc midi à l'heure de pointe, heure à laquelle les clients entraient abondamment en ces lieux. So they are talking that it was 12 and that was the time that many people were coming and they were entering at that place to have their lunch. We're going to continue to read. Mais hélas, comme piqué par une mouche, la dame responsable de la charcuterie surgit avec un grand fouet en main comme un morceau de chevaux et s'est mis à chasser les vieux mendiants. So, the story is saying that this man Kimbangu sitting there, the boss of one restaurant came with a wood, a part of wood to hit the man because she believes that the man was stopping clients to go to his restaurant. But no one knew at that time who was that man. No one knew that and why he was there. So the man had a plan. He knew why he was there. So we're going to learn that from this story. D'abord verbalement puis physiquement, tout le monde observant la scène avec un regard mécontent. Les passants et les clients de la cafétéria, dont 8 officiers brevetés de l'école de formation des officiers, au grade de lieutenant, y compris aussi ses propres clients de la charcuterie, y étaient témoins oculaires. Elle continua à chasser les vieux mendiants par les injures, puis les frappant avec ses grands fouets qui touchaient de temps en temps à autre sa plaie. So, the lady who came from another restaurant, she started to beat the man, this man that we call Kimbangu, that we call the African common ancestral source. So the lady from the other restaurant started to beat the man because she didn't want the man to be there. By the time he was like a homeless and asking for people money, so they didn't want it. So that's why the lady started to beat the man. And everyone was there. No one could say anything. So we're gonna follow the story. Suite à l'accès de douleur, le vieux soulevant la jambe et s'écria à haute voix, Jésus-Christ, Jésus-Christ, Jésus-Christ. Très touchés, tous les clients s'approchèrent de la femme avec des menaces, surtout les jeunes garçons, les officiers qui étaient sur place. So, as the lady from the other restaurant started to beat the man, this man started to cry, Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ. The man cried the name of Jesus Christ 3 times, but the lady was there still beating the man. And everyone came, but no one had power to do something. We follow the story. Un lieutenant giflant la femme qui se blessa à lèvres supérieures de la bouche et saignait abondamment en appuyant fortement son dos contre la bordure. Ce vieux mendiant muni de son panne, qui était en réalité l'homme en panne, s'efforçant à se tenir debout, et il y parvint sous la colère doublée de la tristesse, sa respiration rapide fera bomber sa poitrine. Donc, ici, on est en train de nous dire the story is telling us that as the lady from another restaurant started to beat the man tried to stand up, and his body, his chest moved up, out, like a double size. So he was breathing with difficulty. Then the lady kept to threaten the man to get up from there. We keep the story. Soudain, le bain de sang par terre devint très noir. Il fixa un regard piquant vers la dame de charcuterie, frappant fortement sa poitrine et s'adressant à elle dans un langage non articulé. So this man, as he suffered a lot from the lady who was typing or bidding him, he stand up and he could now speak anything, but no one could listen to what he was saying because the word was not clear. But they say the comprehension of what he said, he told that lady, "My daughter, it was good that you should not be born." That's the word of the man. He told the lady that it should be good if you were not be born, but you came to beat me. So that continue. I'm gonna read. Ces coups de frappe renversant tous les bouquets de fleurs se trouva devant la grande porte du salon d'honneur où le chef de la colonie britannique reçoit ses visiteurs de marque. So, the story says that this man had to beat his chest, and by beating himself, his chest, that shake the land, and even other things fall down. And they are saying that even the office where the UK colonization governor had been receiving his visitors, there were flowers and many things there. It just fallen down by itself. I think you come to understand which power had this man. By typing his chest, he could make the land shake and the things could fall down. So we're gonna keep reading the story to come to understand what happened to this man. En revanche, dans la ville d'Ibadam, la responsable de la cafétéria offrit une somme de 300 livres nigériennes au vieux mendiant pour les soins en l'autorisant son chauffeur de le conduire à l'hôpital. Soulevé par des officiers, le vieux fut mis dans la voiture. À travers la vitre de la voiture, 6 lieutenants parmi les 7 lui offrirent un billet de banque. Mais, arrivant au 7e, le vieux refusait de prendre son argent. L'officier insistant, « Prenez mon argent, je vous le donne. Souvenez-vous aussi que c'est bien moi qui a giflé la méchante dame qui a fait couler votre sang. » So, the story here, they're saying that those military officers, those who were there at that time, the lady was beating this man. So they helped the man, and one of the officers tried to give money to the man, like take this money and go with that. But the man refused. He said that no, I cannot get your money. But he took money from other officers, but he didn't took money from that officer. Why this man refused to get money from this officer? So we're gonna learn that about the reason. So I'm keep reading the story. They say, le sang des Africains que tu verras verser demain à la suite de tes propres ambitions démesurées constituera tout un ruisseau par rapport à mon sang que la femme vient de faire couler. So what they are saying here is that the man said to the officer, the blood that the lady spell from my body will not be more than the blood you will spare, the African blood and the Nigerian blood that you will spare on ground. So this was so amazing story, and the people didn't know why did he say that, but he said it because he knew something and he had power to understand things and to proclaim things. But there were another officer that the man gets his money, and he went with him to the hospital. He asked him, let's go to the hospital. So they went to the hospital, and I'm keep reading the story. L'officier acceptant volontiers, après le pansement des soins médicaux appropriés, l'homme en panne lui dira, en observant vos traits, vous vous ressemblez au vieux sage Yakubu. Yakubu, c'est de lui que vous êtes fils. So, from this Nigeria pathway to the independence, the man was talking to this officer and telling him that according to your face, it looks like you are a son of Yakubu. And did he ask him, are you the son of Yakubu? And the officer said yes. So Yakubu was one of the men well known in Nigeria at that time. And his son was in the military. So this man, the African common ancestral source, he's going to speak to him. He's going to prophesize to him, and he's going to tell him things that will happen. So I'm going to read the story of what will happen. What did he tell him? So we're going to see. So Yakubu, people who live in Nigeria, they know the name, and everyone who can consult Nigeria story, they will remember about the name of Yakubu. He is one of the Nigeria former president, and at that time he was coming from a military academy, so he was a lieutenant. And this man will prophesize on Yakubu and about the situation of Nigeria. So many Nigerian people, they don't know the pathway of the independence. Many Nigerian people, even African people, they don't know about the pathway of their countries to the independence. But this story will help every African to understand his country pathway to the independence. And even Black American or descent of slave, they should understand the pathway of African independence. Who was behind African independence? Who helped African countries to get the independence? Knowing that, it will help you to understand that you guys coming from one ancestor, and your ancestor has one source, and the humanity comes from one ancestor, and those ancestors and this first ancestor, they all have one source, and this is the man we call Kimbangu. He's demonstrating at every African country, choosing people from the civil society and helping them, guiding them into they got the independence. So without his help, no African country should be independent. That's why this story is very important for everyone who from Africa, or everyone who will like to go to do the business in Africa. And as you know, the world today needs Africa, because with the climate change problems, with the economics problems, with everything that we have as problem in this world, the Africa still the solution of the future of our world. So if the Africa has peace, the world will have peace. if the Africa doesn't have peace, the world will never have peace, because the world is the fruit of the humanity birthplace, which is Africa. That's why the history of African independence is very important, and especially the story of this man who worked hard to help African countries to get independence. To know him, it's very, very important, because this is a reference of the future of the world, how the future of the world will be. So then this man talked to officer Yakubu. I'm gonna read it. Sous peu de temps, le pays sera indépendant, mais vous ne serez pas encore président au moment où vous le serez. La nation sera déchirée en deux entre la province d'Ibo, dont le chef-lieu est Biafra, et le reste du pays. Je vous conseille dès aujourd'hui que pour pallier cette situation, il faudra prendre des mesures afin de mettre en place des négociations et non faire usage des armes qui pourraient occasionner un bain de sang sans précédent. Autrement, je dis ceci, vous feriez mieux d'accepter des négociations entre les deux parties prenantes. Sinon, avec l'utilisation des armes, vous allez vous entretuer entre compatriotes nigériens. Ceux qui sont dans la province d'Ibo à Bafia sont des Nigériens, et ceux qui occupent le reste du pays sont aussi des Nigériens. Par des armes, la catastrophe aura lieu de part et d'autre. So this man here, he's talking to the officer Yakubu, and as we said, this was in 1962. So he's telling him that one day you, Yakubu, you will become the president of Nigeria. And he said, before even you become the president of Nigeria, Nigeria will be separate in two parts. One part will be Igbo, Biafra, and the other part of the country. So in 1962, no one knew that Nigeria should be separate by two. But this man, Kimbangu, already knew that. And he was preparing the officer named Yakubu, telling him, when you will become the president of this country, the Nigeria will be separate in two parts. But I don't want you to blush the blood of the Nigerian people. And he said, every time African blood goes up, I feel pain. That man is saying. So just guess that someone you don't know, he's telling you that every time you guys create violence in Africa, you make me feel bad. So what was this man? As we say, this man named Kimbangu, he's the one who helped each African country at that time to get the independence. So his name was Kimbangu. So he said everything, and he promised that Yakubu will become the president of Nigeria. But before him, another person will be there. And if you look at the Nigeria story, you will understand that Yakubu became the president of Nigeria. And when he became the president of Nigeria, the Nigeria was living under conflict. So, but he followed what Kimbangu told him, that when you will become the president, do not kill people, do not use the force, but you have to negotiate to keep peace. So that is what he did. And one day, the Nigeria got independence, and Yakubu became the president of Nigeria. So this was the end of our story, because the story is a little bit long. And in one part, it says that when the man was talking to Yakubu, the future Nigeria president at that time, he took 1 minute without speaking. But when he came back to speak, he said sorry to Yakubu, the officer. He said sorry because I went to save the life of Kenyatta in Kenya. Someone want to kill him, so I saved his life, and they arrested that person. That's why I'm back. Sorry, my son. We can continue how I talk. So just guess this man, named Kimbangu. At the same time, he's in Nigeria talking to Yakubu, the future president of Nigeria. At that time, he was also able to go to Kenya to save the life of Guru Kenyatta, which was the prime minister, then become president of Kenya. So this means the same person saving the life of Nigeria people. He is the same person who saved the life of Kenyan people and the Liberian people that we talked last time. That's why in our future video, we will talk about Egypt, and following Egypt is going to be about Ethiopia. Because these two countries, Ethiopia and Egypt, they are countries that people can read in the Bible. As I'm talking now, if you consult your Bible, you can read in Isaiah 18, you will see the name of Ethiopia there. They are talking about a space over Ethiopian river. And if you go to read Isaiah 19 in the Bible, you will also see they are talking about the Egypt. And they are talking about a kingdom that will come from heaven to be inside of Egypt. So just know that usually when you read about Egypt in the Bible, it's not about the Egypt itself as a country that we have today, but the Bible, when talks about Egypt, was meaning about the Africa. Whole Africa had been called Egypt. And when they talk about the river over Ethiopia in the Bible, in Isaiah 18, they also talking about the kingdom that will be over Ethiopia, which is the space where we call DR Congo. So that's why in our next two videos, we will talk about Egypt and Ethiopia. So we will learn about this man, the common man who saved Africa from colonization, how he did it in Egypt, and how he did it in Ethiopia. So as we said, it's better to learn African history because is the future land. Many people will not know about that, but politicians, they know about that. They know that the Africa is the future land that will save the world from climate change threat and from even a political crisis. So if we learn about the mother's land, Africa, we will understand how the future will be and how good in love people should live in this world and support each other, not looking for bad against other people, because it's just for nothing. This life is a temporary life. So if you spend your life in doing bad to other people, you are just making your own farm, and you will come to recall the bad thing you are doing to others. So it was so pleasure to have you in this continuing education program, public continuing education program. As we said, if you want to get involved, if you have questions, you can contact us in 603 820-9171. You can text us and we will respond to you if you have questions, or you want to learn more, or you want to get involved in this project, this program of public continuing education. So peace and love, and we say ciao, and we see you soon. We will talk about Egypt. Thank you.